Good evening, everyone. My name is Heidi Pampel. I am the VP of the Los Osos Valley Garden Club, sitting in for our president, Wendy McCune, who couldn't be here tonight. Welcome to our February program, Vertebrate and Insect Pests of the Home Garden and Landscape, presented by Kim Wilson, Master Gardener of SLO County. During the program, please remain muted with your video turned off. Feel free to ask questions or make comments in the chat. We will discuss these at the conclusion of the program. Before we begin, I have a couple of announcements. To learn all about the Los Osos Valley Garden Club, who we are and what we do, please visit our website, lovgardenclub.org. Our next Zoom program on March 17th at 6:45 p.m. will be the Growing Tomatoes Successfully, a previously recorded presentation by Master Gardener Joan Cloutier of Santa Clara County. Whether a seasoned tomato grower or a newbie, Joan's tips will ensure your success. And now, tonight's program. I bet there is not one person in the audience who has never had to deal with at least one kind of pest in their garden. I know we have. I could tell you about the night when we had 2 6-pound heads of cabbage disappear from our vegetable garden, but that's a story for another day. Master Gardener Kim Wilson will explain the basic principles of identifying vertebrate pests, how to control them safely. Kim will also tell us about the most common insect pests in the home, landscape, and garden, how to prevent and control them when needed, always keeping the health of the environment in mind. Kim has been a master gardener for 10 years. She has dealt with a wide array of pest problems by serving as the coordinator for the Master Gardeners Helplines and answering questions from many home gardeners. She is also very involved in training new master gardeners. Please welcome Kim Wilson.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to talk on this very large subject that's interesting, but I had to sort of decide what the pests were most common to get fitted in this hour, but it's a good thing to be here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about our overall strategy that master gardeners use in pest management, and then I'll talk about basic management for vertebrate pests, specific vertebrate pests, and then I'll do that for insects. I tried to pick the most common ones that you see in the garden. So our main strategy is called integrated pest management, and it is an ecosystem-based strategy to prevent and manage pests using environmentally sound methods. And so everyone's yard is unique. You have a different climate, you have different amounts of sun and shade, you have different plants. So what goes on in your yard is unique to your own little ecosystem. The most important thing you can do first is to correctly identify the pest. And once you know the pest, then you consider the pest biology. How does it reproduce? What kind of food does it like? Why is it in your yard? And then you try to manipulate those factors to make it not such a great place for it to be. The goal is to reduce the number of pests, especially when we're talking about insects. We just want to decrease the number of pests, not necessarily wipe them all out, because we don't need to do that. For vertebrates, the first thing you need to understand is what is the legal status of the animal. Most of our vertebrate pests in our yards are legally non-game animals. And what that means is that you can control them or kill them any time of the year without a permit by any legal means. Now, raccoons are slightly different because they're legally fur bearers, but if they're causing damage, you can still treat them like a non-game animal and control them by any legal means any time of the year. Now, there are some species of tree squirrels that you cannot kill or control without a permit. So you just have to keep that in mind. Methods vary depending on the pest, but the most important thing is to monitor your property and catch things early. It's a lot easier to deal with a couple of these guys than a lot of them. So monitor, detect early, and other possible methods include sanitation. You want to deny them the food, water, and shelter that they're after. And other methods could include exclusion or fumigation, live or kill traps, and baits. Baits is something for the most part, we stay away from just because the risk to non-target animals is high. So we try to use all these other methods. If you're considering live trapping an animal, you have to consider what's legal. It is illegal to trap an animal live, take that trap with the live animal in it, and move it to another property. If you live trap an animal on your property, by law, you have to kill the animal on your property. So that's something to consider when you think you're going to do live trapping. When you kill an animal on your property, it's supposed to be done humanely by legal methods. And in the state of California, it's illegal to drown an animal. It is legal to use carbon monoxide, but it's difficult. The state of California keeps on changing the laws to restrict carbon monoxide. You can't use it within 50 feet of a occupied building, either occupied by animals or people, or 50 feet from a riparian area. So there's restrictions that make it difficult for most people to use. You can shoot an animal where legal. So within city limits, you won't be able to do that. Other places where it's legal, you can shoot them. Carbon dioxide is permitted, but by specific method only. You can't throw a bag over a live trap and throw a couple chips of dry ice in there. Carbon dioxide poisoning can be a cruel way to die because our bodies, the animals' bodies detect the carbon dioxide, their heart races, their respiration rate increases, and there's a lot of fear and terror. So you have to do it by using a kill box. You place the trap in the kill box. You got to go to the welding shop and get bottled CO2 with a flow meter. It's very complicated. So you have to consider these things when you're thinking about live trapping and then having to kill an animal. Gophers, we're really familiar with gophers here, of course. They are mostly underground. They do come above ground. They eat almost anything that they can get, roots and all sorts of plants. They carry pests and disease, so we don't want them in our yards. Their classic mound is this horseshoe-shaped mound with a plug on one side, right there. And there are different methods to deal with them. In a smaller landscape, you can exclude them. You plant your plants and trees in gopher baskets that you can buy pre-made or make yourself of aviary wire with a certain 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch hole in it. If you're going to put them under raised beds, you have to use galvanized or stainless steel wire mesh because that mesh will not degrade, at least not as nearly as fast as the regular gopher basket type wire, which will rust and degrade. Things that don't work for gophers are fumigants, flooding, and gassing, because these guys are really adept at moving dirt. The minute they get a whiff of an odor, they're going to plug up their tunnel, and so it's not going to work. Repellents, noisemakers don't work. There are natural predators like gopher snakes and owls. If you put an owl box on your property, chances are it's going to do more benefit to your neighbor than your own yard because they like to travel a ways before they hunt, but owls are great for that. Trapping is the key way of dealing with them, especially when you're talking about a small piece of property that has a handful of gophers on it. But trapping and control of gophers is an ongoing process. It's not like you're going to do it once and you'll be done. It requires constant vigilance and continued monitoring and then dealing with them. There's all kinds of traps, and we don't have enough time to detail how to use these. But what you have to understand is these traps vary in the hand strength required to set them. Some are easier than others. Some require considerable digging to locate the tunnel. Some don't require much. The black box up here doesn't require much digging. The other ones require more digging, and placement of the traps can be something that you have to learn. You have to become accustomed to. So it's almost better to have someone show you how to use the trap and how to place it, and then figure out which one you like to use. We have 3 master gardeners that talk on this subject all the time, and each one has a favorite trap. So you have to figure out for yourself which one works best for you. And then also they vary on the amount of contact with the carcass. A lot of these, if you re-engage the trap, the gopher will come off. Other ones, it's a little bit harder to use. So those are considerations. So try them out and see what works best for you. In sandy soil, they say that black box is the way to go. But basically, if you have multiple foci of gopher activity in your yard, work in one area at a time until you get control, and then move to the next area. You always go to the fresh mounds first. So the darkest moist soil is where they're going to be currently active. Set the traps in the morning and late afternoon. Check the traps often. Don't leave a trap unattended for over 24 hours. So set the trap. Some people like to put a flag so they know where the trap is, and then go back at least within 24 hours and see if you have a gopher. If you don't, you might have to move it or adjust how it's located in the tunnel. Always wear gloves when you're handling these traps, and of course the gophers. When you get a gopher, when you get them off the trap, kick them into the hole you got them from and bury them, or else double bag them in a garbage bag and throw them away. But once you trap them, collapse the mounds so that you can monitor for new activity. Gophers like to come and take over a tunnel when a gopher's been killed. Some gophers will come and take over his tunnel, so you may see new activity, but you have to be persistent. Now, baits, I'm not going to talk about baits except this one time here, and that is only because there are some people that don't have the physical hand strength or the physical ability to dig into the tunnels or to set the traps. This is an option, but with all these baits, you have a risk of having non-target animals be affected by this. Now, with gopher bait, you have to be meticulous. You put the bait in the special device. You cannot spill any of it on the ground at all. You have it in this device. You can probe and you can find the tunnel, because it'll give once you go in the tunnel. You turn the crank, it releases the bait into the tunnel. You cannot put this probe into the plug or any other way. You put it down through the ground into the tunnel. The gopher will eat it. He will die quickly with one feeding. And it really would be rare for that gopher to leave that tunnel during the day after eating this bait and survive long enough to get outside. But it could happen, and so that's why you always have to consider non-target poisoning with these kind of baits. But this is the only reason why I'm bringing it up, because some people just can't trap. Now, moles, I bring them up because their mounds can look similar to gophers, except they're perfectly round. They don't really have a plug. If they did, it would be in the center. Moles are meat eaters. They eat grubs and earthworms. They cause damage because their feeding tunnel is right under the soil surface, and it raises the dirt, creating these raised runways that can really wreak havoc in lawns. And they also can secondarily damage plants by disrupting roots and disturbing plants that way, but they don't eat plants. The easiest way to control them, if they're in lawns, you control the grubs, because that's what they're after. So you deny them their food, essentially, is what you're doing. And then the other way is traps. Trapping moles is a little bit tricky in the sense that the trap is different than those used in gophers. It's specific for moles. and it has to be placed correctly. But you tamp down the runway, you see what ones are the most active, and those are the ones you try to trap in. But some people really swear by the method that you tamp down the whole, this runway, and then you monitor. You either sit there in a chair holding the shovel, or you're busy in the lawn, and you keep an eye out on that runway. And the minute you see activity, these guys don't go really fast. You have time enough to go over there with a shovel, dig him up because he's not very deep, and hit him over the head with a shovel. Some people say that's the easiest way to deal with these guys. Flooding, repellents, specific plants or material exclusion just doesn't work with these guys. So now ground squirrel is the #1 vertebrate pest in California. And we don't like these guys because they will eat fruit and nuts and plants, and they're really destructive by their burrowing. They carry disease and pests of their own. Their #1 predator is the rattlesnake. Rattlesnake's diet, 70% of a rattlesnake's diet is composed of baby ground squirrels. So where you have ground squirrels, you have the risk of having rattlesnakes around. These guys are active during the day, and especially in the afternoon. They burrow and have these open holes that you can see. They like to tuck them up against hardscape, fences, trees, on hillsides, and they just can cause a lot of damage. They're a little different than other vertebrate pests because they have specific time of year when they're active, and their diet changes. So we sort of take advantage of those things in our strategy with dealing with them. Their diet in January to May is green plants. They eat green things. Starting in mid-May through October, they eat seeds and nuts. So if you would trap them, if you would want to bait a trap, you would tailor it to what they're eating. Fumigation, unlike with gophers, fumigation works with ground squirrels. But there's how you do it is specific, or when you do it is specific. You only fumigate between January and May. And there's 2 reasons for that. One is the ground is wet, so the fumigants are more effective. They work better when the soil's wet. And also, the environment in the soil is wet, so the risk of fire from the fuse is less. So you only do it in that time period. And the only thing you have to keep in mind, if you use this method, which is a good method, is that you have to make sure for sure that hole, that burrow, is occupied by ground squirrels. Other animals will take over abandoned burrows, specifically foxes. And we have a lot of them around here. So you want to make sure you're certain. And small properties, even a couple acres, it's pretty easy when you walk outside and you scare off, a squirrel gets scared and it takes off running. You have a really good idea what direction he's going in, and often you can see him going in the hole. So it's really pretty easy, but it's really important to make sure you're fumigating an active burrow. Toxic baits have no place in homeowners' properties. We're not dealing with hundreds of squirrels, and the risk of non-target poisoning by toxic baits, it just is not worth the risk for homeowners. The risk is too high. Trapping, you can do it live trapping, but you have the problems I talked about, or kill traps. And the kill traps, there are kill traps like the conibear trap, which is a real evil trap. It's one that you put up at the mouth of the burrow. It has to be set during the day when they're active, but any animal coming along during the day could get caught in it. You don't have them active at night, but still during the day, another animal could get in it. So it's really not one that I would use at all. We use one that's called a tunnel trap. This is in our demo garden. This opening is 4.5 inches. We've never caught anything in here but ground squirrels. It's great for situations where you just have a handful of ground squirrels a year. You can bait it, not bait it. The only trouble with this is that it's hard to set, and it's a little awkward to set, but we use it successfully, so it's a good option. Burrow modification involves digging up the burrow, which seems a little crazy. Shooting is allowed where legal. All these other ones just don't work very well. So those are essentially the options for ground squirrels. Voles or meadow mice, and the important thing is to catch infestation early. But essentially, they want to hide. So they want areas that are weedy or have grass or heavy mulch where they can run and be hidden when they're running around, okay? So if you clear areas of weeds and high grass around your property and your trees, have a buffer zone around your garden, then they're less likely to be a problem. They make these 1.5 inch holes, and they usually have runways on either side. So they usually come out of their hole and go right or left. And you can see that here. But essentially you make it so they can't hide and they're not gonna like that. You can use fencing. I don't know how effective that is. They eat all sorts of things in your garden, almost any beets, carrots, greenery, they'll eat anything. And they chew bark off the base of the trees too. You can protect trees by putting tree guards on them. You can try to use mouse traps. They're somewhat successful. It's a little hard. You put a trap to the right and to the left because that's how they're gonna exit their holes. You can bait them or not. Skunks, now these two pictures were sent to us at Helpline, and they were like, first they looked like holes, like it could be a vole, but this didn't go into a burrow, like a vole has a little burrow. It was just like a divot in the soil, and then these trenches here. What this is this is either a skunk or a raccoon feeding. It's sticking its nose down there, trying to get some grubs. So that's what that is. And then, you know, we all have occasional skunk or raccoon walking across our property. It's not a big deal. But if they decide to take up residence, that's something you're not going to want. So basic thing with these kind of guys is to have habitat control. Deny them food, water, shelter that they want. Control grubs in the lawn because they can really dig up a lawn looking for grubs. So you deny them the food that they want. This habitat control is the same that you're going to do for rats, which I'm going to talk about next. There are two kinds of rats in California, roof rats and Norway rats. There was a chart I had that had all the different, you know, Norway rats are bigger, you know, these roof rats here have a longer tail, but most of us aren't going to spend time looking at these rats trying to figure out what they are. We're going to do it based on their behavior, which is pretty easy to tell them apart. So roof rats obviously like to be up high. They want to be in trees and shrubs. And indoors, they're in the attic. They're in walls and false ceilings. These are the guys that like to eat fruits and nuts and berries. Especially they love avocados and citrus. If you have an orange tree and you see an orange that has a hole in it and all the inside of the orange is gone, and the rest of the rind is intact, that's a roof rat doing that. On the other hand, if you have lemons, they eat the entire rind and leave the pulp hanging on the tree. I don't know how they do that, but they're active at night. Norway rats burrow, so they're along the ground on foundation, under wood piles. Indoors, they're in the basement or ground floor, and they eat, their diet's different. They eat grains and nuts mainly. You'll find nests lined with shredded paper. They're active at night too. So essentially, food, water, shelter. So you don't have pet food outside. Bird feeders are protected from these rats. Garbage cans secure. Pick up all fallen fruit. Water bowls, you shouldn't have water bowls outside at night. Check for leaking water from spigots. For roof rats, you want to make sure you don't have arbors and vines and trees near your house where they have access to the attic. And wood piles, lumber, garden supplies out in your yard. It's best to have things neatly stacked and elevated off the ground by just a few inches and enough to make everything orderly where they can't feel like it's safe to put a nest. And all entry holes into your house, that are 1/4 an inch or more, should be blocked. Now, you don't use caulking, which might be the You might think, well, that'd be the obvious thing to do is use caulking or wood or plastic to fill those holes because they'll just chew through them. You use coarse steel wool or wire screen to stick in crevices and cracks and holes. And so you're just denying them food, water, and shelter. The gold standard for rat control are traps, okay? You can do snap traps, and they're, those wooden ones, I think they're Victor ones, they have the red V on them. They've been around forever. Those are really good. They have a sensitive trigger and they're powerful and it kills them. They're very effective. But these newer ones are easier to set, but the trigger plate is not quite as sensitive. And you can use electrocution traps, which are expensive, but they work. Glue traps, they don't recommend for rats because they're too big. The rats are too big and they'll carry the trap off. Where you place the traps depends on the rat you have. So roof rats, you're going to put them up on ledges and shelves, branches. You might have to secure them somehow with wire. And Norway rats will be along walls or in dark corners. You just look where they are, where they're droppings. Now, the key to traps is to pre-bait them. Rats are suspicious characters, and they're suspicious when something new appears in their environment. So if you put traps out, they're going to be suspicious of them. So don't set the traps, just place them where they need to go, put bait on them, and let the rats get used to them. So let them run around, take food off the traps without getting hurt. And if you put the traps out and the bait is all gone within 24 hours, then you know you don't have enough traps. You put more traps out. And then you let them get used to it for a couple of days, bait them, set them, and you'll be successful. Outside, you only set these traps from dusk to dawn when the rats are active because other critters can get in these traps. Birds, you can catch birds in these things, so it's best to not have them set during the day. But that's how you don't ever rat bait. I would not use rat bait at all, again, because the harm to non-target animals is extreme. I would not go there. So that's vertebrate control. So insect pests, the same kind of thing goes. You want to monitor, you want to catch trouble, pest problems early. But the thing with insect pests is you have to decide what your tolerance is for the pests being there and what is the plant's tolerance. Some plants are perfectly fine with some pests being on them. And it doesn't matter to their health, they're fine with it. For example, oak trees, most oak trees have insect pest that's called a crown whitefly. If you look at an oak tree, under their underside of their leaves, there'll be these black whiteflies, but the tree does not care. And that's because their beneficial insects are in that tree, taking care of them. But you'll have tree companies that will charge you $50 to put an insecticide into the ground to take care of those whiteflies. But so you don't need to go there because the tree is perfectly fine. So you have to make the decision, is control even needed? And if it is, then you select the proper control that's best for the environment. You see if it results in what you want. And then going forward, you think, how can I prevent this in the future? And the number one thing to prevent pests is cultural care of your plants. Because healthy trees that or plants that are growing well are not attractive to pests. Pests target in on the weak ones. They target in on plants that are struggling and are growing poorly or are sickly. That's where pests go. So if you take good care of your plants, they're less likely to have significant pest problems. Integrated pest management that is shown in this diagram, and that is prevention is first, cultural care is next, physical, mechanical methods, and the biological, and the least used is chemical. Integrated pest management is not organic gardening because every once in a while you have to use an insecticide, but then even there you go with the least harmful of all. Prevention would be timing, pruning, or fertilizer. When you fertilize or prune, the plant will push out new growth. And pests love new growth. They love that tender new growth. And so you have to time it so when the pest isn't around. And then you use resistant plants, like say you have a trouble with powdery mildew in your garden. If that's a consistent problem, then look for plants like, there are cucumber varieties and squash varieties that are resistant to powdery mildew, and use those instead. And then another prevention method is to keep dust down in your yard. I never quite understood this one. They say that it's keeping dust down prevents pests. I'm thinking, well, why is it, do pests like dust? What's the deal with dust? So I asked an entomologist, and she said, it's not that pests like dust, it's that pests don't care about dust. But beneficial insects hate dust, and they get distracted by it. And so they're busy cleaning off the dust off themselves, and they're distracted and not doing their job. So then the pests can go get out of control. So keep dust down. And then cultural care, like I talked about, is really important. The biggest mistake people make is with irrigation. Most people, despite us being very aware of water in California, most people overwater. And when you overwater, the plant roots don't work right. They don't function right. So they can't draw up nutrients, and they can't grow. The roots can't grow. So the plant struggles, and that's a magnet for pests. So you got to figure cultural factors. You have to know how to help your plant grow well. Physical management would be taking the hose, setting it to the strongest spray, and watering off the pests. Works really well. Hand removal, like knocking pests off a plant into a pail of soapy water, or clipping off leaves that are coated or really heavily coated with a pest, is good. Covering new, like when you put your vegetable seedlings out in the garden, to cover them with row covers. That protects them, lets them grow and get established before pests are able to get to them. And biologic control is to control ants and attract beneficial insects. This picture here was sent to our helpline, and the person said, "Are these mites on my plant?" And you look at it and you go, well, yeah, they sort of look like mites, but the trouble is they're much too big for mites. Mites are tiny. You need a hand lens to see them. So these aren't mites. What these are parasitized aphids. So a parasitic wasp has come along, it laid an egg inside the aphid, the egg hatched, the larva's eating inside the aphid, and eventually the adult will break out of the aphid, it'll make a hole and fly away. So this is good news for this gardener to see this. They can see that they have beneficial insects working in their garden, which is pretty amazing. Now, chemical control, this is, you use this if you have an overwhelming problem that's causing harm to the plant. And two of the ones that have the lowest impact are insecticidal soap and horticultural oil, or neem oil. And these two are contact insecticides. So if you have pests on the underside of a leaf, you have to spray these on the underside of the leaf on the pest. And they essentially smother and they interfere with the biology of the pests, and they die. But it's contact. Now, the good thing, the one disadvantage is anything on that leaf, if it's a pest or a beneficial insect, it will be killed. But if a beneficial insect comes along after you've sprayed and lands on the leaf, it won't be harmed. It's only on contact. And you might be tempted to make your own insecticidal soap, but that's not advised because you're not sure what's in your soap. So if you use dish soap, there may be some product in there that might be harmful to the leaves. So we don't favor that you make homemade insecticidal soap. But both of these, the soap and the oil, should not be applied to drought-stressed plants, or if it's over 90 degrees or in full sun. These products can also, it could harm bee if you were sprayed it on a bee. So usually you don't spray these on flowering plants. So that's how to avoid that. You always follow directions when you do this. Now, BT down here is a real nice product. It's completely organic. It's bacteria that kills leaf-eating caterpillars, but it will only kill caterpillars that eat leaves that you spray this on. So if you spray this on tomatoes to get those really ugly tomato hornworms, it will kill the hornworms, but it won't kill anything else, right? Because nothing else will be eating those leaves. So a monarch caterpillar is not going to be on your tomatoes eating tomato leaves. It's over on a milkweed. So you don't have to worry about non-target killing of insects. There's no harm to beneficials, bees, or anything. The one thing you have to be careful of is that when you spray, that you don't have overspray onto something that has like milkweed. You don't want to get spray on that. It must be eaten to work. You have to buy new every year because it's an organic, it's a biologic product. So a BT container that you've had for 2 years will not be effective because it degrades. So you have to get new every year. These ones over here in the last square, do not use these. In our home gardens, there's no reason to go there. We're not selling produce. We're not making our living off of things. So we just don't go there. Now these, I picked the most common insects to show you. Citrus leaf miner is real common. It's on every citrus tree in this county, I can guarantee you. But it's important for you to recognize the damage. Every year we get people bringing this in all the time, worried that it's got a disease or it's got a really bad pest. But these leaf miners come along and the larvae will eat inside these tunnels. So you can't really spray this and have it be effective. But the fact is that citrus trees tolerate this. And then the tracks change with time. So first, here, let me see. This is all shiny. And then eventually it'll dry and blister. And then eventually it'll really turn brown and crack. So you have to be able to recognize all those stages so you don't worry about it. Because the bottom line is the tree will tolerate it. We don't treat it at all. Make sure the tree is growing well, encourage beneficial insects. The big thing is that you might be tempted to prune off these ugly leaves. If you want to prune them off, you wait till winter when the pest isn't around. If you prune them off in the summer, you prune them off and then the tree will push out new growth and the leaf miner will go, cool, I have new food, because they love the tender leaves. So wait till winter to prune if you want to do that. Now there are insects that create this they make this cottony white waxy material to coat themselves with, and that's just a way to hide from predators and to protect themselves. These over here are mealybugs, and their cottony white stuff is more sticky looking. They tend to be between fruit, on stem ends, navel ends, and they are on more than just citrus. So you'll see this on a variety of plants. These are white flies. They tend to be on leaves and their covering is more cottony. They're a pest on many different plants. White flies can be a significant problem on hibiscus, where they can really just, the leaves will be coated with them, so they can be a problem. These pests produce honeydew. Honeydew is sweet and sticky, and ants love it. So when you see ants going into any tree or bush, you know that you have a pest up there that's making honeydew. Ants essentially protect these pests from beneficial insects. And that's because they want them to keep on making honeydew. It's like their own personal herd of cows. They want to protect them, so they keep on making the honeydew for them to eat. But with these, basically good cultural care, you control ants, and I'll explain that later here. and you encourage beneficials. So I'm sound like a broken record here, but this is exactly what you have to do in most cases. And the plants will tolerate pest damage, and beneficial insects will control. These are the types of pests that water sprays are good for. And when I say water sprays, it's not like you spray once and you're done. It all depends on how many of these pests you have on your plant. But if you have a fair number, you're going to want to spray one day and then wait 2 days, spray again, and another 2 days, spray again. And the idea is that you want to knock off enough of them so that the tree can recover and the beneficial insects can take care of the rest. So you have to judge based on how many white flies you have, but you just don't do it once, and then of course there's eggs on there and they'll hatch. So you want to spread it out over a period of time, but just keep an eye on it. And if it's really heavy, like in the case of hibiscus, when you just have tons of these white flies on it, you can, in between the water sprays, use insecticidal soap. Always follow the directions, never spray it during the heat of the day, kind of thing, because that can hurt the plant by the soaps and oils. Scale is difficult. This was left too long. Now you should spot these things before it gets to the stage, because it depends on the type of scales. Most scales produce honeydew, so you'll have ants. So if you control ants, you're more than 50% there to control them. But if they get this far advanced, it's going to take a while for the beneficial insects to help with them. This one here, this scale had a beneficial insect that parasitized it, and it broke out and making that little hole, it flew away. So this is a good sign, but you have to control ants. The usual encourage beneficials, dust control. If it's focal, you can prune it off, and you can open up the canopy if it's hot, but usually where we are down here, it doesn't really get hot. Timing the oil is really difficult if you want to spray it with horticultural oil, because when they're covered with this cap that they make, the oil isn't going to do anything with them. But you have to catch them when the eggs hatch, and the little crawlers are running around for about a week, and then they settle down, and then they make this cap. Once they make this cap, the oil, that's not going to work. So timing of it is tricky. The crawlers come out in the spring, but depending on the weather and where you're located, the timing of it is hard. So mainly you try to prevent them. Sooty mold is a harmless mold that likes to grow in honeydew. So when this was left way too long, you had some sort of honeydew producing pest in here. The honeydew coated the leaves, and then this mold just loves to grow in it. The mold isn't harmful to the plant at all. It just is growing there. Now, when it gets this dense and it's essentially all black, it can interfere with photosynthesis. So this isn't really great. You don't ever want to let it get this far. So the pests have to be controlled, ant control, and you're not going to get to this stage, but you can try to wash this off if it gets that bad. To control ants, how you do it is you can use little ant baits that have some variation of boric acid, if you're talking about shrubs or something like that. But if you have ants going up into trees, like citrus trees or deciduous fruit trees, you want to apply a product called Tanglefoot, which is that sticky substance he's putting on there. Now you have to put a ring of tape. You use a compressible adhesive tape that you can apply to the tree and squeeze so it fills every crack, because you don't want the ants to go under it. And then you apply the Tanglefoot. The important thing is you have to trim the tree so not a single leaf touches the ground or a fence or a post. The only way up in that tree is this trunk. And all citrus trees should have this on them, because keeping ants out of the tree is the #1 way to prevent problems. It really is a huge deal. We actually have our master gardeners have made a short 5-7 minute YouTube videos on different topics. And they have one on this very subject. It shows you exactly what to do, what supplies to get. And you can find those YouTube videos if you go to our website. If you just do an internet search for Slow Master Gardeners, you'll pull up our website. And on there, it has the link to our YouTube channel, which has a lot of nice videos. Now, these, unfortunately, are aphids. These gray, they're very common. There's tons of different kinds. These gray ones are probably the most often we see on broccoli and such. But these ones up here are black bean aphids, and they're really nasty. They like to be on chard and chives and nasturtium. And while you can spray these off with water, these guys, you can't spray these off. It's like they got little hooks on their feet. I don't know what it is. The only thing I found with these guys is to actually prune the chives and chard to the ground, throw out all this stuff. I spray what's left with water. And by the time the chives and chard grow back, which they will pretty quickly, the black bean aphids are gone. So, but with these guys, essentially water sprays, I don't usually use any kind of insecticides in a vegetable garden. And, and the key thing to draw beneficial insects into your garden is to draw them in early. So you want to plant flowers that they like before you even plant your first vegetables. So first thing in the spring, you plant a bunch of alyssum, which is a great plant that draws in beneficials like crazy. Organic vegetable gardeners that grow them agriculturally for sale, they actually plant rows of alyssum first before they even plant their lettuce. So you want the beneficial insects to already be there, ready to go before the pests arrive. Aphids their activity usually decreases with hot weather, but again, we don't usually get hot weather here. Aphids also, they're on all sorts of plants, but the treatment is essentially the same. On plum trees, sometimes we get people saying, my plum tree has peach leaf curl, but plum trees don't get peach leaf curl, only peaches and nectarines. So if you see this, these are aphids. And these guys feed on the underside and they really coil the leaves tight. So you can't use water or even insecticidal sprays because you can't get them on the aphids. So the best thing for this, if you get it in your plum tree, is to put tanglefoot on the trunk and to, usually there are only a couple focal areas of these kind of branches, and they're usually small branches, so you can just prune them off. You just want to decrease the number. And then over here, sometimes you'll see on leaves, you'll see these funny papery fragments. You think, are those white flies or what? And what's weird about them is they have little legs. You can make out little legs and you think, what the heck are those? And what that is, those are shed skins of aphids. So aphids are like snakes. When they grow, they shed their skin. So sometimes you'll see these fragments. So if you ever see these papery things, you'll know that you have aphids around. Thrips are difficult. I'll just tell you, they're difficult. They get on all sorts of things. They get on shrubs, they affect roses, they like fruit. And the treatment varies, the strategy varies depending on where you have the problem in your garden. So, but the thing that they all have in common is that the adult thrip spends its winter on grasses and weeds. So if you have grasses and weeds around your property, make sure that they're mowed down before winter. Because if you mow them down before winter, there's no place for them to overwinter and they'll go someplace else. Because if you don't do that, they'll be out there on the weeds in the winter. And then in the spring, they'll fly into your yard and they can feed on leaves. The trouble with fruit trees is that, especially like nectarines, like this is the nectarine on the bottom here, is that they have the flowers first. There's no leaves. there's just the flowers, the thrips fly in, they get in the flowers, and they start feeding right away. So when the fruit is just forming, they're already feeding. By the time you see this and the fruit's this big, the thrips are gone. So, and the same with this. This is avocado. It always makes this quirky like look on it. This is really marked. And if there's not enough leaves to entertain them, they'll go to the fruit. So with avocados, the strategy is you prune in January, not any later. And if you do that, the leaves will be more abundant and there'll be new growth, and the thrips will be entertained by that, feeding on that new leaves, and it'll delay them going to the fruit. So usually it improves this so you don't get this damage. Citrus, you can get some corking around the stem end, but it's not even worth worrying about because we don't eat the rind, and so it's not something to bother. This kind of damage to avocado, it doesn't affect the inside. Sometimes if it's really extreme, it can cause the fruit to drop early. And the same for this. It's really not pleasant to look at or to eat through, but it doesn't affect the inside. So, they're difficult. Chemicals are difficult. If you had this problem continually on nectarines, what you can do is when the flower petals drop, you spray it with where the fruit is growing, where the petals are dropped, you spray with horticultural oil because the thrips will already be there. So they're a little difficult. Caterpillar, I talked about that before. You use BT. When the plants are young, you can cover them with a row cover, which will protect them from the moth laying the eggs that hatch into these guys. So you catch it early, you can remove them by hand, clip them with garden shears, whatever works for you, or you can use that BT, which works really well. Now, we're already getting questions on grubs in garden beds. This time of year, people are preparing their soil and they start digging and they see these guys. These are mask chafer larvae, and they mainly are a pest of lawns, but they can occur in raised beds and in gardens. They can feed a little bit on roots, but overall it's not a massive pest, but we just don't like seeing them in our garden beds. So in the spring, the only choices really are to remove by hand, try to pick out as many as you can, or you can dig and turn them over and then walk away and let the birds eat what's exposed and then repeat it, because the birds will love these guys. Now you can use beneficial nematodes and you can get them online. They're microscopic worm-like things. They come in a little pouch or on a sponge, and you put them in water, like in a watering can. But the only trouble is you have to do it in the summer to fall because the soil has to be warm. So it doesn't work to do it now because the soil is cold. So you can work to prevent them next year. So you can get them in the summer. The soil will be warm. You wet the soil, you water them in, and next year you won't have them. But overall, they're not a big problem. They're not like they're going to eat all your vegetable roots anyways, but we don't like to see them. They can occur in compost if the compost hasn't been heated high enough. So you got to use quality compost. And this is a new pest because we certainly don't have enough already. This guy's been around in our county for a couple years. Yeah, a lot of fruit trees have it. Our fig tree in our demonstration garden has it. So you're going to want to check if you have a fig tree. Right now, there is no treatment because it's a brand new pest. But what they do is the fly comes along and it deposits an egg inside green, immature figs. And then the egg hatches, the larva tunnels and does all this damage. This is actually a pupa here. It's already pupated. But then what this does is it causes the fruit to drop when it's still green. And then the larva will exit and it completes its life cycle in the soil and flies back up. I think it has a couple generations a year. So The only thing you can do is monitor your fruit trees, look for damaged fruit. And oftentimes after it's done this sting here, this will turn black and purple around this area. So you'll be able to pick them up. But if you see any of these on your fruit tree, take them off, throw them away, and pick up all fallen figs on the ground. That's the only thing we can do right now. But you have to be aware, hopefully they will find a treatment for it. Beneficial insects, these are some of the flowers that they love. They usually love small flowers. Buckwheat is probably the #1 attractor of beneficial insects. Alyssum is good, Scabiosa. Let some of your vegetable and herbs flower because they like those little flowers. And a lot of flowers that are pretty are good for beneficial insects. This again was sent to our helpline, and these are parasitized mummy aphids. So these are a little older than the ones I showed you before. They have the exit hole and they're completely dried up and dead mummies. So this is a real good sign. This person has a lot of beneficial insects working in their yard. And then we have helplines. We have 3, and we love questions. You can call, you can visit, and you can email us. And this is our email. The only thing you gotta know about our email, we love emails, and you can send pictures, is sometimes even if you email us, if we email back, sometimes it ends up in your spam folder, which is real frustrating to us because sometimes people we don't have a phone number and they think we're not answering them when in fact we did, but it's sitting in their spam folder. So keep that in mind. Look for our emails, sometimes go there. Visit our website. Our helplines, we accept samples like at the helpline, we accept samples 8 to 5 o'clock, 5 days a week, and they save them for us. So when we're there on Mondays and Thursdays, we can look at the specimens.